Good morning, everybody. Welcome to today's 1 million by 1 million strategy roundtable for entrepreneurs. 1M by 1M, as you know, is the first and only global virtual accelerator for technology startups. We run it out of Silicon Valley, but with a global footprint of both entrepreneurs, and our team is also global. In support of our mission, we have been doing these free mentoring roundtables for a long time. We first started with the experiments in 2008, September. And at the time, the 1 million by 1 million program did not exist. So it's a very long journey, 551st session today. We've been here almost every Thursday morning, every year since then, except maybe 4 or 5 sessions a year we wouldn't be because of vacations or holidays or whatever, but like we're not here usually on Thanksgiving, but most Thursdays you'll find us here with a global congregation of entrepreneurs on Thursday mornings, 8 a.m. Pacific time, and all the recordings are available on our YouTube channel. The channel is 1M1M Roundtables. On Twitter, we're at 1M1M and at Romana. We publish a lot of interesting stuff through all our social media channels, actually, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything. Today's hashtag is 1M1M. Now, today is the deadline for submission of the applications for the DataStax 1M by 1M Startup Challenge. So DataStax is doing an accelerator with us for developer entrepreneurs using Cassandra, DataStax Enterprise, or AstroDB. High performance, real-time database kind of applications. And you will get a 1-year scholarship to 1M by 1M Premium if you win this, and you will be working with us for a year subsequently. We will announce the results on November 11th. I guess if you are applying, you already know all this. I don't think you're going to start thinking about it today. But today, midnight, is when the applications are due. We will have time today for Q&A. We do not have scheduled pitches. We do have a guest. We're going to spend, that's our scheduled programming today is our discussion with Sandeep. I will introduce him in a moment. But please do participate. You're most welcome to participate, and you can ask questions in public chat and so on. One other housekeeping thing, next week, we are going to do a big session on the 1M by 1M Ambassador Program, which we are relaunching with a different spin for teaching and building startup ecosystems around the world. We are now equipped to be able to do this in every corner of the world, and we've put a lot of pieces together of the jigsaw puzzle, and we want to hand it to 1M by 1M ambassadors to work with us as affiliates. So we'll discuss all that in more detail next week in a full session. Today, we are going to start the conversation with Sandeep Sardana, founder and general partner of BluePointe Ventures. Sandeep, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Romana. Good to be here.
Sandeep, let's start by introducing our audience to you a little bit. So tell us a bit about your journey. What path brings you here?
Well, thank you for that question. Journeys are very important, and I think in our case, particularly mine. I've had an entrepreneurial bent for a long time. Runs in my family. My father was an entrepreneur. My brother was an entrepreneur. And, even from high school where I was selling high C in the streets of New Delhi to even selling vacuum cleaners door to door during college, has always been sort of hustling, selling stuff, and just sort of building a business of some sort. Along the way, I was involved with a few startups. Some I founded, some I worked with. And as an entrepreneur and an entrepreneur, you get some operating chops. And then at some point, I founded an angel investment network and invested through that, worked out okay, gave me an opportunity to launch a fund. So that's how I got started in venture.
And BluePointe is, how big is the fund?
So, we are about, let's say, 8 to 10 years old, depending on how you look at it. And we started with the smaller funds. First couple of funds were 10 million a piece. Now we're just launched 2 funds, 25 million a piece. So that's 50 million being launched right now. We've raised for the early stage part of the fund most of the money. We are now working on raising the later stage fund, the follow-on fund, simultaneously to the early stage fund. As the companies from the early stage funds are graduating, we'd like a vehicle to absorb some of our pro rata there.
So let's try to double click into the specifics of the early stage fund, Sandeep. Tell us about stage. What stage do you like to get involved in? What sectors do you like to invest in? And what is, more specifically, what is your investment thesis for the early stage fund?
Good question. We're a generalist investor, so we invest very early in terms of we might in fact go all the way to pre-seed. Oftentimes we'd like to see some traction, a good amount of the team built up, and financials worked out, and we ask the entrepreneur to tell their story through the financials, which is sort of an interesting take from our end, because we think as the entrepreneurs talk about their vision, they have to keep an eye on how they're going to build a business, right? And articulating the business through financials gives us a lot more comfort that we're looking at something that can have a sense of a venture-based, venture class business model, let's just say.
So let me probe that a bit.
Yeah.
When you're doing a pre-seed venture, you still want the entrepreneur to be able to tell the story in financials, how they see the business coming together, yes?
Roughly, it always makes sense to us. I think an entrepreneur does need to keep a mind on cash flows. They have to understand that most of the companies don't go out of business. They just run out of money. Mm-hmm. And money is an important part of it. So, they don't have to get it right the very first time. They just have to be able to articulate a few things properly, right? Yeah. And we support that. We work with them, but we want to know that the person that is articulating their financials has a basic understanding, a good enough understanding, let's say, of what is going to matter, right? Metrics matter, and as they graduate to the next level of financing, those things will matter more and more. So what to keep an eye on is an important piece.
So as you know, we do these sessions very much with an educational agenda. Do you have a case study where a pre-seed company did a really good job of articulating their finances, and what did they tell you? They're telling the story in finances, what did they tell you? What's a good example of articulating a hypothesis, a financial hypothesis?
Yes, I do have one case study, but this is an entrepreneur who had done it before, so he knew exactly what to tell us. Outside of that, it's harder and harder, and sometimes it takes a journey to get them to that point.
So I'll tell you what we do in 1 million by 1 million is very much what you're talking about. We do very thorough bottom-up TAM analysis, which means we have to get the business model and the pricing model hypothesis. Whether it's right or not is another thing, but at least when you're starting out and trying to go out and raise money, whether you're raising pre-seed, seed, post-seed, pre-series A, it doesn't matter. Whichever round you're raising, that financial hypothesis is really important to get right, and we emphasize a few specific elements. One is the business model, 2 is the pricing model derived out of that business model, and 3 is a bottom-up TAM analysis, taking those 2 elements into account. So does that cover what you're looking for in financial storytelling, or is there other things that you want to see?
I couldn't have said it better, Samana, and I'd like to send a few of my folks over to you to learn
Please
exactly
do.
that.
I always tell our VC friends that whatever you're rejecting, send them to us. We will process them and send them back to you because we know exactly what is going on in this ecosystem.
You hit the nail on its head.
So let's talk about geography. Is it Silicon Valley? Is it all of America? Is it other countries? How do you think about geography?
Yeah, good question. I think there was a time that we were focusing just about everywhere to try to find a good deal. As an example, in Fund One, we invested mostly in Silicon Valley, but we also invested in New York. We invested in India. We invested in, Estonia. In fact, one of the better investments we made was in Estonia. More lately, it's been mostly Bay Area, but we're starting to look again. In fact, I'm taking a trip out to UAE. There's some few interesting investments that I'm possibly looking at over there. So yeah, as the company is also starting to realize that they can register themselves in Delaware and make it friendlier for U.S. investors, and also bring their IP into Delaware or wherever in the U.S. I think it makes it a lot easier for us. The other piece, why mostly U.S. and particularly early stage in the U.S. has to do with the tax efficiencies. Because of QSBS, it makes more sense to find deals here. Because if we do outside investments, they may or may not be QSBS qualified. And that's an important factor when we do invest early stages.
Well, in the India-US corridor, which is a corridor we work with a lot, there are two classes of companies, right? There's this global B2B companies that typically do the Delaware company and then put the IP in the Delaware company, raise money in the US. At least, maybe they have a little bit of money from India or they're bootstrapped in India and then they raise money here often. Or, there are major VCs playing in India as well. So there is plenty of money available, but even the ones who are playing in India, if they're global investments, global market pursuits, they tend to want still Delaware companies. The ones that are going after India domestic market, the B2C in particular, or the fintech, or the India-facing ventures don't do that usually. Is that?
They do not need to do that. If there are businesses over there, they're not going to need to register here. And we've actually tried to invest in a company called Grow that was a YC graduate that was registered in Delaware, but all their businesses in India. So that's one example of somebody who is registered here, but because of their YC graduation, I think they had to do a Delaware corp.
But do you invest in companies that have a market strategy that is completely not North America?
Nowadays, yes. I am starting to look at that.
You are? Okay, interesting.
Yes, yes.
We are seeing a lot of that. We have some very, very interesting companies in our portfolio that we have one India company that's really interesting. We have a company in Tanzania that is really interesting.
So all those would be great. There's a question of governance, and distance-based governance. Will that work? India is a bit easier to think about given our families there. So the passport to India is a lot easier that way. Outside of India, UAE is directly in our path. Singapore, maybe some of the other Asian countries, but Africa is starting to emerge as a phenomenal place to invest, and we're starting to pay attention to that. I'm not sure we're going to make any investment anytime soon. I don't think we have the firm scaled up enough to do that many global investments, but we'd like to start taking some start making some investments there.
So let's talk about some of your portfolio companies. What have you invested in that you're particularly proud of or find really fascinating? And Tell us the journey. When did they come to you? How did they come to you? Why did you write the check? What was it that caught your attention? So let's just try to understand your thinking vis-a-vis some of your portfolio companies.
Sure. I think we're very proud of the sourcing mechanisms we've created. I think we broad source our deals through a number of mechanisms. So I'll give you an example of a few of the companies. One in particular is Techion, which is started by the ex-CIO of Tesla Motors, somebody we work with for a long time. Every so often we run these panel events, and we're very interested in running CIO panel events. And Jay Vatan, the founder of Techion, was invited to one of those. Eventually became good friends with him. And when he was starting his company, we knew exactly the story in terms of how he had done this within Tesla and what he would do outside. We were jazzed about him as a founder. And that's what we generally focus on, is the quality of the founder when we invest. And his team was with him, phenomenal team, great vision, and proven execution inside Tesla and inside VMware and inside Oracle, wherever he's been. So we followed that story, and we're so glad that we made an investment. We invested in the seed round as one of the first checks in. A great syndicate coming alongside us, and that was invested at a 10 million pre 13 post today valuation in 4.5 years. Is that about 3.5 billion? So that's, those are great fund makers, multiple fund deliverers, if you will. Other companies, there's a company called Dentira that we incubated in our office with an entrepreneur who'd already done it before, and good friends with us, hung out with us, and we hatched this idea of creating a marketplace for dental supplies, and leverage our network to help the entrepreneur get this thing going, and on very little capital. And this is what we really, really like about such businesses, is they're super capital efficient and can build a large business without much capital and without much dilution for themselves or for us.
So I want to probe that one a bit. Marketplaces, two-sided marketplaces, tend to be capital intensive, but you have found an entrepreneur who has managed to do a capital efficient two-sided marketplace scale. What is the secret of that?
I think it's very easy, Sardana, in this instance. The entrepreneur is a do-it-all entrepreneur, can do just about everything. Top-level CTO himself prior to this, great business mind, and he's not drawing salary. So, he's wealthy enough now from his prior exits, and built a small, very effective team in Bangalore and delivered what we needed to see very quickly. We leveraged our network, and he also knew that speed matters, because he's done it before and he executed really, really fast in terms of working with other channels to get the product out the door.
So if this company has crossed 5 million in revenue, it sounds like it has already. We would love to do the case study. As you know, we have the Entrepreneur Journeys case study series, and if the invitation is open, if he's interested in coming to the series, we would be delighted to carry him.
I'll certainly have the conversation with him.
What else? What else is interesting from your portfolio or your thinking in general about where you want to invest?
Where I want to invest, or what I've invested in? I'm sorry, I didn't follow that.
Both.
Okay. So a couple of the other companies we've invested in, CloudBrink being one, which is a dream team of sorts, if you will. Just edge compute, and one of the better teams to sort of pull that together. We're going to give it a little bit more time to sort of announce it, keeping it stealth right now. But that's one of the most significant ones. In fact, I was just talking to Maureen that WebEx sessions, Zoom sessions, BlueJeans sessions, all of these are going to improve using their product. So you're not running into any kind of issues in terms of bandwidth not being available to your local device, let's say. Another one that we've made an investment is ClassPass. ClassPass just got just merged with MindBody, and we in the let's say genre of marketplaces. Another one is FanDuel that exited to what's called Flutter Entertainment, or Paddy Power out of Ireland. That was a phenomenal company, and I'm very excited about sports betting market. And I've done a new sports betting investment out of the newest fund, and we're basically going to bring sports betting to just about every brick and mortar location. So we're building the infrastructure for that. And lastly, I'd say we also did Postmates. We've done a new marketplace called Highway Haul, which is actually our newest, let's say, marketplace investment, bringing fresh groceries from shippers using a network of carriers. So you just sort of think of it as Uber Freight or Convoy of fresh produce.
So you like marketplaces, clearly.
I do like marketplaces. And that's about the only, let's say, company, a type of a company we would put money in that is that has some consumer-facing element.
So, what is your analysis of the marketplace opportunity going forward?
Well, it's been doing well. I think it'll continue to do well. I think marketplaces are unnatural phenomena. You're taking what's happening in the physical world and adding digital elements to it to make it far more efficient. It'll just play itself over and over again. We've done multiple other marketplaces. Now I think about it, and the idea where things start to make sense is they grow. When they grow really, really fast. They are capital intensive, but if I find them at the right stage, it doesn't matter as long as they grow really, really fast. And I think the velocity is an important piece of marketplaces.
And what have you learned are the drivers of velocity in a marketplace? What do you check for?
Yeah, that's when you hope that you've made a great bet in the team and their ability to execute. And I think largely market has to support it. Look, some marketplaces haven't necessarily done well because of the pandemic. If you were invested in marketplaces that had travel as an element, and we did, and that suffered through the pandemic. They're recovering now. They were on a great growth path, and then all of a sudden, pandemic happened, and business went to nearly zero. In some cases, 60% of the business has returned. But once that happens, it takes a lot more effort to bring things back. And in other cases, things have accelerated. And I think the majority of the cases, things have accelerated because of the pandemic. My belief is in digitizing the world. And we take a very, you can go to our website and it'll say, look, we look for what changes the human experience. And we follow the change in a human experience by the sources and the impacts of that experience, and look for technologies that have enabled that and business models that have enabled that, and follow that path and put ourselves in front of those things, and we'll find the trends that are going to work. So it's an odd way of looking at it, but that's how we look at things.
And what if you double click down on that statement and maybe identify 1, 2, 3 specific trends against which you would like to invest in? What would those trends be? Digitization is a broad trend, but below that level?
Yeah, so at this point, we're, like I said, we're a generalist investor. Oftentimes, we don't sit down a whole lot and think about what's going to change dramatically. We keep a sense of what's happening with the technologies. and the changing business models. And then as entrepreneurs come to us with their stories, that's when we start to double click to some extent. But I'll give you an example of where we are looking forward to some spaces. Certainly Office Anywhere is one space that is an interest of ours. We ourselves believe that we will not be resigning our own office lease in another year and a half when this expires, and we'll probably start to use temporary spaces. Our employees don't want to come back to the office anymore. They want to work from home. Where we see people need to get together is where dynamic creativity is important to the business, meaning people get together and oftentimes results in very productive conversations on taking a business forward or something that is important. Operating roles where where it's sort of the back office type of stuff, they don't necessarily need to be together in the office. So we're forming our opinions, our thesis on this thing, but that's one place we think we'll invest more and look for more value. We'll continue to look at increased improvements using data and AI. There was one question that people have asked me, look, everything's been done. What's left? Everything we look around and it's been digitized. And where we stand is we're seeing everything getting better and better with newer tech. So as long as you can apply AI for decision making, as long as you can improve the UI, as long as you can add a different business model, you can improve things. And we like to sort of see that come back again. If a startup has actually been successful with one type of, let's say, model, it can always be improved with AI added to it or a better UI. We're also looking at new spaces. Space is interesting to us to some extent. For a small fund, we don't like to do capital intensive industries or plays, but space is interesting. A lot going on there, a lot to happen. Even for a small fund, we've made investments, like I said, in sports betting and in marketplaces. So as long as we can find a path to growth, we will invest.
And on the small fund theme, one thing we've heard from a number of players who have come here for these sessions is that they are exiting in the Series C, Series D rounds. Is that part of your game plan, or is that something that you don't want to do?
It's not off the table. We haven't done it, but it's not off the table. It depends on your portfolio construction in Samana. I think if your portfolio is generating sufficient DPI early enough on its own, you don't necessarily need to start exiting, right? Everyone's got their targets. We have our target of what we want to return to our investors in terms of net. And if we're able to get to it sufficiently without having to take positions off early, proactively, we'll do that. But if we need to be proactive about it, we will be proactive about it. So we don't have a set sort of plan on when we will take money off the table, if you will. We see how our portfolio is developing and decide as it comes together.
Well, I think if your strategy is to focus mostly on capital efficient deals, then it's not as necessary to do that. But people who are doing small funds but are investing in these companies that raise hundreds of millions of dollars, that's when I think that is becoming an important question, is how long do you want to stay in that and get diluted and so on, right?
True. I think that's an important consideration. For us, it's let's just say that if we see the market expanding for the company we're invested in, even if we are getting diluted, our share price is still growing.
Yeah.
And as long as there's meaningful growth in the share price and in our holding, we'll probably carry on. So founder vision, that's why it's been very, very important to us. And if we try to establish that early, and if the founder stays with that vision and can create more value, market is willing to pay for, and an investor is willing to drop in hundreds of millions of dollars, so be it. I think time will tell. Samana, you have a lot more experience, sort of talking to a lot more people, and yourself. I think I'm still learning. Over time, I think these patterns will reveal to me, and I'll also figure out whether I should have taken money off the table, as Samana was saying one day. Live and learn, I guess.
We're all learning all the time. My last question, Sandeep, is how do you view first-time entrepreneurs? If a first-time entrepreneur came to you with the good, financial storytelling, the way we discussed earlier, would you invest in pre-seed? Would you invest in seed? How do you evaluate first-time entrepreneurs?
We've done, I'd say, quite a bit first-time entrepreneurs. And we'll continue to do that. There's a certain amount of rawness, and there's a certain amount of energy in the first-time entrepreneur. So as long as they have fire in their belly and stars in their eyes, and they can prove that they can do it, we'll back them.
So you would do a pre-seed deal with a first-time entrepreneur if there was a good financial storytelling and vision setting and energy and so on?
I've recently done one, and I'm doing another one right now.
Very good. Very good to hear that. Because that's one of the gaps that we struggle with on behalf of our entrepreneurs, that everybody, and the market is full of repeat entrepreneurs. So anybody who's doing investments is looking for repeat entrepreneurs, and pre-seed for first-time entrepreneurs is a big gap in the market. Very few people are doing pre-seed for first-time entrepreneurs. So that's where we try to, find people who are open to that opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, look, first-time entrepreneurs can be a little bit more reasonable as well, right, in terms of their ask for valuation. That's helpful. And second piece is, as long as they have the ability to pull a firm together, get a team together, and articulate a great vision, I'm not sure why you wouldn't do it. And oftentimes we work in syndicates. So if I'm leading a deal, I'll bring a syndicate together. My energy will rub off the other folks in the syndicate with me, and they'll co-invest alongside. So there's always a reason to sort of invest in a first-time entrepreneur and bring the energy of a syndicate to them, so they have the ability to bring the firm together, let's say, in maybe I shouldn't say a safer environment, but at least in a relatively safer environment.
Great. All right. Well, Sandeep, thank you for sharing your thoughts, and thank you for coming today. We will be in touch. I do have stuff that I will be sending you in as soon as they're ready. So I have noted what your inclination is towards. So I hope to find you stuff that are of interest to you.
Good deal. Thank you, Samana.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Folks, very quickly, I'll explain to you how to use 1Mby1M. Everything is at 1Mby1M.com. So you just need to go to the website, and everything I will tell you here is very easy to access. You will find our blog, which is free and which is very rich. You can start your journey through the Entrepreneur Journeys book series, Learning Journey. All of them are available on Amazon. These roundtables happen every week. You're welcome to come back as much as you want to. And our full acceleration program is 1Mby1M Premium. Go to the self-assessment. These are the due diligence questions that investors would ask you. Ask these questions of your venture and see if you can answer them. Our philosophy is bootstrap first, raise money later. So go do the bootstrapping course. That's a free, just about an hour course that is very popular and very well articulates the philosophy of 1M and a lot of techniques. The Udemy courses are very reasonably priced, and you can find them on our website on the link that's on your screen right now, or just do a search on Udemy courses. based on 1M methodology, and you'll find the whole list, or just do a search on my name on Udemy and you'll find them. 1M Basic is our full all-you-can-eat curriculum-only option, $99 a month. And then we also have everything articulated on the website. You can dig around, FAQs, video FAQs, description of the curriculum. We are a case study-based program. Thousands of case studies make up the curriculum and the methodology. Everything is derived out of case studies. We do introduce you to investors. The reason we bring investors here is to kind of network with them, help you network with them, and get to hear from the horse's mouth what they want to invest in. We do have the philosophy, don't go to investors as beggars, go as kings. The methodology that supports that thinking is bootstrap first, raise money later. That's it. We have 3 more roundtables in November. Next week's roundtable is a special one for 1M1M ambassadors. We're going to be talking about that program, and of course there will be the regular pitches. So please sign up to pitch. And if you have questions, I will take them now. You can dial in, ask your questions in public chat. Either way is fine. And if you have questions about the program, the 1M1M program, you're welcome to call Irina Patterson. Email her, irina@1M1M.com, and take it from there. There's a question from Renuka Sajjan. Do you support entrepreneurs who are ideating, bootstrapping, and not looking to raise money at the moment? Would you help evaluating the idea? Very much so. I actually love entrepreneurs who come to us very early, because then you can avoid making a lot of mistakes that people are making out there. So by all means, join the program and at the ideation stage, and we can definitely help you get further with that. It's a perfect stage to join 1M. And Abhijit Sengupta, what are your views on peer-to-peer lending startups in India? Well, peer-to-peer lending is a trend. It's a trend. It's a globally validated trend. It has been a very successful trend in America, and it's an emerging trend in India. So I would say I'm quite bullish on the trend. The fintech trend in India, in all its various different forms, is happening. Fintech has been very big in the US and in Europe. And much of that concept arbitrage is happening in India right now, whether it's peer-to-peer lending, small business lending, personal loans, various kind of credit, etc. It's just a gigantic trend, and I think it's going to be an ongoing build-up in that sector. Does that answer your question? Anybody else? Any other question, comments? Dharmesh Singh, who's on your screen right now, just raised money, $4 million. Very interesting company. We've had his investor, Warren Weiss, one of the investors, who's also part of our ecosystem, come to this show recently and talk about that. All right, I don't see any other questions, so we're going to wrap up, and we will see you next week. Hope to see you back here. Bye-bye. Take care.